And I went to Georgia Tech to get my degree in biomedical engineering. And I had so many people tell me that I would never graduate. I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't do it by myself and whatever, which, once again, like, please tell me I can't do something, and then I will show you how I can do it.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Badass Leaders Podcast. Today, we have a special episode I'm very excited to share with the Badass community. Back in Season 1, Episode 14, my dear friend and former colleague, Gia Ganesh, stepped in as the host and interviewed me. Yes, I was the one in the hot seat. We talked about burnout, resilience, my leadership journey, career pivots, conflict resolution, and so much more. And now feels like the perfect time to bring it back. Why? Well, because Gia just launched her own podcast, People Multiple, and the first 3 episodes are already out now. So if you care about leadership, talent strategy, scaling companies, organizational health, and the people decisions that shape enterprise value, you need this show in your weekly podcast rotation. So please enjoy this re-release and then go subscribe to People Multiple wherever you get your podcasts. Links are in the show notes. So welcome to the Badass Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Gill Nelms. And if you're ready to talk leadership without the corporate BS, then let's do it.
My name is Gia Ganesh, and we're switching things a little bit today with her podcast. I'm going to be in her seat asking her the questions because we want to get to know Angela. There's so much to this amazing lady that you all should know. You've all learned a lot from her as she interviews and talks to other people. But this lady is amazing in so many ways that cannot be described in an hour, but we're going to try and see how we can capture the depths of it, at least to a certain extent. So Angela, welcome to your own podcast.
Thank you. I feel a little nervous right now. I'm going to change it to, I feel a little excited, a lot excited. So, but thank you.
You're going to be fine, Angela. Feel at home, in your own home, in your own podcasting studio. But thank you for giving me this opportunity for,
thank you.
Firstly, spending an hour with you is really, I love spending time with you, as you know, and then getting to know you a little bit more. And I want you to share with your podcast listeners things that they don't get to hear because you keep asking people questions, right?
Okay.
Deal. Are you okay?
Yep, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. I want to start with be brave, be badass.
Okay.
You've said that I know you for the past 7 years, I think, 6-7 years. And ever since I've known you, you've said that phrase. You have to tell us what that means, how you came up with it, why that is your motto for life.
That is such a great question. So, as many things, I kind of stumbled onto it in a time in my life where I just needed encouragement. So I created that hashtag about 14 years ago.
Wow.
And it was when I first started doing triathlons. And so marathons, triathlons, and exercising. Mm-hmm. And I became really passionate about motivating other people that they could also do it, right? How many times do we see someone do something and we think, I could never do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's typically we absolutely can do that if we really want to, right? And so I started understanding this idea that each of us individually, we have our own personal badass. And what does that mean? Mm-hmm. It is our absolute personal best at that time and stage in our life. And what my badass is different than what yours is, Gia. But we each have our own personal badass, okay? And the thing that I've realized is that oftentimes we as humans are afraid to try and strive towards that. And so Be Brave, Be Badass is really an encouragement to everyone to not be afraid, to be brave and really capture and live your personal badass because you only live once. And, it's like that poem, The Dash, that I share with a lot of people. You only live once. And so using that opportunity to absolutely be your best. And now it's evolved with the AGN group into helping teams, companies, and organizations also be their absolute best.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's easy to say that, right? Like it's easy for me to say to you or for you to say to me, be brave and be badass. But how can we be brave? Because many of us do have inhibitions that don't let us be brave and to be badass, right? Like I know what I should be doing or could be doing, but I have my own set of imposter syndromes that hold me back. How have you overcome that, or do you kind of fake it till you make it? What strategies do you use to help people break through those kind of barriers?
I love this. So, one thing is, I strongly believe that we don't give ourselves anywhere near the grace we give other people.
True.
And so, oftentimes, I feel as if I'm judging myself that I can't do something. I'm being way harsher than I would ever be for somebody else. So, at the stage where I finally learned to sit back and stop living for other people to just live for myself. And also learned that the idea of being brave and being badass doesn't mean you're always awesome. It means being the best you can at that moment or at that stage in your life. And so there could be a stage in your life where you're sick a lot or you have struggles or whatever, right? And it doesn't look as glorious and amazing to you. And you may think, this isn't badass at all. However, if every day you get up and you say, I'm going to do the best I can do today, that's it. You know, I heard this on a movie. There's a reason you have eyes on the front of your head, right? And not in the back. Like live forward. And so really for me, it's because I've had a lot of pivots in my career as well. It's really just been, okay, let me center in today. And what is the best I can do today? And what's holding me back? And I think as far as the imposter syndrome and also thinking, I'm not sure I can do this, that, or the other, I think a couple of things that have really made a big impact in my life is surrounding myself with amazing people. So I try and steer away from, the people that their glass it's not even always half empty. It's like 3/4 empty to them, right?
Right.
I mean, it's just like it's exhausting to be around. And I've really transitioned to staying with people who are also trying to live their best life. Not saying you have to be fake and all of that, but you can be authentic and true. And then when I surround myself with those people, I started having people affirm me in the same way I was affirming them. And the power of encouraging someone else, we forget. Like if you do nothing else, if listeners, watchers, if you take nothing from this, but that the power that you have to really say something incredibly motivational that can inspire someone else is huge. And it's really easy on our end. And so by really focusing, giving myself grace, by focusing on the day, in the moment, and also surrounding myself with people who lift me up, people who help me learn, grow, aspire, and people who believe in me and affirm me, that's really allowed me to traverse many rocky roads and challenging times.
That's awesome. Especially given that yesterday was International Women's Day. I know you have a lot of inspiring women in your life who are part of the circle. Can you talk to us about one person and how they inspired you to be this brave, badass life that you live today?
Oh, well, this is...
And you don't have to name the person.
I love this. I think that... I think that a couple of things. One, I have within my family, I've had several really strong women in my family who really supported me. So, one example is my Aunt Connie. Like, they have nurtured and loved me my entire life. I mean, I am the daughter that they never had, right? And they always believed in me and said loving things to me. So, and now that I see them caring for my 101-year-old grandmother, and the other grandmother is, I believe, 94 or 95, and they both live in their house. And they're caring and loving for them. I think that amount of servitude and love for family has been really inspiring. I would say that, I had another aunt that when I was young, I was one girl and I had 3 brothers. And when she was raised, she was the girl with the 3 brothers. And we used to have this phrase, us girls have to stick together.
Yeah.
And I remember that. I mean, that is probably one of the earliest phrases in life I remember, is hearing her constantly say that.
Us girls have to stick together.
Yeah. And I think that in looking at the way these two aunts of mine are very different, but they really, really supported me being a female and wanting me to be my best. And oftentimes, unfortunately, we see women who don't lift up other women. And I think actually, if I were to pick one person that inspired me to be my best, it would be because she was not her best. And I had this instance when I worked at Medtronic. It was really the big reason I left Medtronic is that I had a female manager who was just awful. She was one of those that was like, oh, wait, Angela might get promoted and might do well. I'm going to do everything I can to hold her back.
Okay.
And it was really an awful experience. And I observed that and I thought, you know what? Never will I do that. I will do everything I can to help. And I don't just help women, right? I want to help anyone grow. But I specifically will do anything I can to help women who are willing to empower other women.
Okay. Angela, you've been big about community always. And you brought that same kind of mental attitude towards building companies as well. You did that at Florence. You've done that at other organizations. You've gone on to build after Florence as well. And I know you often mention Steve Wozniak's book in your podcast. I don't recall you mentioning that book when we worked together at Florence, but you already had that attitude about white glove customer service. That was the phrase that I'd heard from you the most, like after the Ritz of the world, Ritz-Carltons of the world, you were the only one who doesn't matter what we do, we have to provide white glove customer service. So tell us a little bit about how you cared so much about building a community where we provided white glove customer service and ensure that we had that community feeling inside and with our customers.
I love that. Well, what's funny is you didn't hear me mention Steve Wozniak's book then because he had not written it yet.
Exactly.
And he published his book in 2023. And the thing that was really I caught on to with his book is that it reminded me so much of Ken Blanchard's book, Raving Fans. It was published in 1993. And that was very purposeful. If you watch the interview, you guys should go watch episode 1 of the podcast. But I think, reading Raving Fans really had a big impact on me. But even earlier in life, I always had this mindset that anything you do, you should do your absolute best. So if you're bussing tables at McDonald's, you should be the best table bus person. I also knew that I had experienced how much better it feels when you can smile and be happy with people. And I think, I remember when I was in college, I worked at a jewelry store and I just wanted to talk to the customer. I wanted them to feel at home and to be a part of any community that we were in. And then I observed instances where I started to identify my own brand loyalty based on how people made me feel. Like the restaurants I would go to because they would remember what I wanted to drink or what my meal was, or they'd ask about my daughter. And I quickly picked up like, wait, I'm going back to these places, or like REI and their return. I would rather pay more money and buy something from REI and know that I'm covered and there's gonna be no questions asked, right? And so I think as I started doing this, and then when I was at Medtronic specifically working with these nurse coordinators at hospitals who were super busy, I also learned that if you make life easy for them, then when you need them to actually fill out their documents, they're more willing to do it for you because you actually care about them and you have recognized how busy they are. You've seen them as a human. And it really helped me realize just that people want you to succeed when they know you care about them. And so when Ryan Jones recruited me to Florence, the white glove customer service and the healthcare and then building great teams, those are my 3 pillars the entire time. I was like, absolutely, we have to have these things because I know if we can deliver these 3 things, we will be successful. People want to see you be successful. And how great is that when customers are fighting for you to be successful?
Yeah. I'm going to switch a little bit between personal and professional to make the
Let's do
episode
it.
interesting. You spoke about doing the best you can at everything you do, right? Like whether it's bussing tables or anything else that you do, you have to be the best you can. But does that also mean that we are striving for perfectionism? Does that hold some people back? What are your takes on striving for the best, but not being hindered by perfectionism?
Oh, totally, totally. My favorite phrase is "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good," Voltaire. And I was lecturing a class at Georgia Tech on Friday, and it's on project management. The students were getting so nitty gritty into something that I was like, whoa, wait. The point of you learning project management is to have an overall path towards success where you're moving that way. You cannot let perfect be the enemy of good, because if you try and make every single detail, you'll just drive yourself insane. And I think it's the same thing about trying to be perfect in things in life, is that no one else is perfect. So I'm not sure why we think we have to be, because we give them the grace. We're like, oh, it's totally fine that bowl that's wood turned is a little off edge there. If it's their bowl, but if it's my bowl, oh no, it's got to be perfect. And I think that having the idea of understanding there's beauty in things that are not perfect, because it means that they were made by someone, not by a machine. There's beauty in slowly growing. It takes 10,000 hours to be an expert in something, right? So your chapter 1 is never going to look like somebody else's chapter 10. And so I think that being able to laugh at ourselves when we make mistakes and realize it's not our own personal identity, some of those things have really helped me over the years expand. There have been times there are times I'm absolutely a perfectionist. Like if it's a PowerPoint deck and I see a mistake on it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, how did that get out?
Like, the fonts being different.
Yes, listeners, if you do a PowerPoint deck for me, the fonts cannot be different. If we're using sentence case, you have to continue to use sentence case, or title case, use title case. Oh my gosh. So, but I think that it's also taking a step back and saying, okay, what does success look like in this instance? Success is not perfection, because that's typically a lack of just passion in it. So success is growing, getting a little bit better. And I think maybe one thing that really helped me later in life were the more random hobbies I would pick up. I suddenly realized, like, I'm not going to make a perfect knife blacksmithing, or like I said, a perfect bowl.
Yeah.
And if I strive, if perfection is the only thing that will make me happy, I will be miserable. And so I really want to get to, also, I think if you want to break your perfectionism at some point, get to a point where you're blacksmithing and something looks a little off and you're like, oh, I'm going to keep fixing it. And then you burn it up in the coal. And you're like, okay, now that was actually perfect. Like the spot before. But when you realize that sometimes in life, and I think this is a good thing to think about in life, sometimes in life when we try and push for perfection, we actually just burn up the joy and the beauty of it.
And in case you're wondering why she's talking about blacksmithing, it's because out of the million hobbies she has, one of the hobbies is blacksmithing, and we'll get to it in a bit. But back to Florence and Medtronics and some of the other organizations. Angela, you were also very keen on hiring people that were coachable, and people who exhibited, and even when you interviewed me, that was one of the things you said that really helped me move forward in the process, because I was coachable, willing to take feedback. Tell us a little bit about that and how you've taken feedback from others and how that has helped shape your life.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I remember your interview.
Yes.
That must have been 7 or 8 years ago.
7, yeah.
Okay. And yeah, I think here's the deal. Let's go back to the perfection thing.
Yeah.
No one's perfect.
Exactly.
No one is perfect. And the beauty in life, I think, is surrounding yourself with people with different skills and having the ability to learn and grow by being surrounded by them, right? It would be really boring to be surrounded just by 100 Angelas that all did the exact same thing. We would never grow. And so the coachable part is that if you're coming into an organization and you're not willing to grow and learn from the people you are spending more time with than your family. I mean, literally, these are the people that you're spending the majority of your time during that tenure with. If you're not going to be a lifelong learner and you're not going to want to learn and grow and continually become better, then that's a pretty sad life. And a lot of people live in that world. I think a lot of people live in that world because they do have fear that they're going to be discovered, that they're not perfect. So here's a secret. No one's perfect. So you're already discovered. Yes. You were born. So you're not perfect.
Yeah.
And I think coaching on the other realm has times where it's been easy and great and other times where it's been hard. So I would say that the coaching I loved is when I could get people who reported to me to give me feedback, which that's really hard.
Yes.
And I remember this one employee at Florence who I could not get her to give me feedback. And I was like, okay, look, you just said you love when I give you feedback and you're growing. And yet, so by you not giving me feedback, you're basically not allowing me to grow at all. Like you're kind of screwing me over. So I said, I want you to go home and your homework is to come back on Monday and tell me something I need to grow and learn. And she did. And it was a great experience. I think those kind of times when people are around you and you consider the fact that they're giving you the feedback because they actually care. They're not being spiteful. They actually care. I think those are amazing moments. Now, the times that I've gotten feedback, the struggle is when you get feedback from someone you don't respect and someone that you really do not believe they have your best interests in mind. And that's the hard part. And so one of the things that I've tried to do when that happens is I've said there's this psychology that says really if not always, but a lot of times if someone says something about you or in a way and it really upsets you, that you really should lean into that because it's probably something that's true that you're being super defensive about. So what I've tried to do more recently when I've had some of these instances is said, okay, one, it's not about them. I don't care who they are, right? Is there any piece of this that I can absorb and hear? Because they may even be saying it to me out of spite, but there are going to be a lot of people in the world who just don't like you. And if you just have a perspective of how you're viewed by different people, then I don't believe you should change yourself to be viewed perfectly by everyone. So I do not want that to be the message. But understanding how that is and then making a decision like, yes, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to stay with. Or, you know what, I could probably address this situation a little bit more gracefully that would help people from different areas. So I think that is the hardest part is when you get feedback from people you don't respect. And I think also if a listener is in an experience like this, then I would also say to them, are you at the right place you should be working at? Maybe it's time for you to transition somewhere else and work with people that you really respect and then take their feedback.
You currently work at Biolocity?
Biolocity, yes.
Do you see upcoming entrepreneurs that are willing to take feedback, or is that something that holds them back because they think they already know or have it figured out?
Both.
Okay.
So yes, I am brand new at Biolocity, which is a philanthropic organization it's funded through Georgia Tech and Emory and through endowments and grants. And the goal is to help commercialize things that have international or intellectual property at either Georgia Tech or Emory. So faculty, staff, or students who have developed something amazing. And the goal of the program is to get it to patients as quickly as possible. And so I can think of some of the teams that are amazing. They come to us and they are like, okay, even simple things, should we do an LLC or should we do a C Corp? Should we do this? What should we do for our QMET? And they're really seeking to help, or they're like, can we practice our pitch deck with you? Or you say something, you're looking at their slides and you say, okay, your slides look like you're presenting at a research conference. You're trying to get money. So stop presenting that way. Let's present how you're selling to VC, and they will love it and they'll take it. And then you have some who will hear you and you'll try and coach them, and they'll say something, and you may say, okay, whatever you do not say that to a VC. And then they'll get into this defensive mode where they're like, oh, of course, I would never say that to VC, but I'm going to say that here. Well, you and I know the words that we use in times like that are what you end up saying, right? Because you get nervous.
That's what you're believing, right?
Exactly. And so this individual got really frustrated, and I just reiterated to them, here's the deal. I know for a fact that the words you say in meetings like this, if you don't practice the way that you need to for the customer, your next customer is going to be a VC, then you are going to say that in that way. So I'm sorry it upset you, but I'm going to give you that feedback because I want to see you be successful. But it is really hard because I'm working with some brilliant people who are amazing, way smarter than I could ever be, which I love. So I'm constantly learning from them. And then we have some teams that we may pull funding from because they're not coachable. And we're all about commercializing. And if you're all about keeping your research in lab and adding all these bells and whistles to it, then our partnership is probably not the right one. So if there's a team, and actually we're in the middle of a funding round, and some of the stuff we're looking at with the teams we may fund are which ones are coachable. Because if they're coachable at this stage, then we can help them be really great.
I think it goes back to what you and I have said for a long time. Brilliant jerks do not work.
Yes,
well, right?
Brilliant jerks do not. Yes,
Yeah.
Get rid of
so
those.
It's so important. It's just not, just being technically competent or brilliant is not enough. We all have to be adaptable, coachable, and agile and nimble in these times where we can also collaborate well with others. That emotional intelligence has to be high as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. Spot on.
I remember you giving me a gift very early on.
I know what this is.
Early on when I started, it was a pair of socks that said, go on to make your next mistake, right? Is that
Yes,
something along those lines?
Yeah, there's a rocket on it.
Yeah, there's a rocket on it,
Yeah.
onto my next mistake or
Yes,
something like that.
yes.
Basically, you urge me to shed my perfectionist tendencies and to, make progress and make my mistake and move on. I wanted to bring the socks, but I could not find it today.
I bought myself
You
a
bought-
pair of those socks maybe a year and a half ago because I remember that story. And so, yeah, I'm not sure I could run and find them really quick, but we'll put a link in the show notes to the Amazon link, and then you guys can all purchase them.
Yeah. The reason I brought that up is because, that's helped me grow. That was feedback that was delivered in a fun way. Talking about fun, Angela knows how to make things fun quite a bit. Even at Florence, she did a lot of quirky little things she would bring into office. She had these no buttons. Do you remember those little buttons?
Yes,
that
where you press the
placed-
button. No.
Yeah, so you've always infused fun into work, even though you were delivering important messages. Fun has been a big part of your life. How do you coach people to have that fun approach as you coach leaders and other folks through the AGN group as well?
The reality is that people engage more, open up more, and remember more when they do things that have a spirit of fun to them. If they laugh, there's something about the energy that you use to laugh. And also, I think when leaders specifically do this, you're more human to them,
yes.
right? And it also allows us, the fun thing about the no button is I had quite a few team members who were horrible at saying no to things. And I was like, read this book, Boundary by Cloud and Townsend, and here's a no button. And, and it was a way that I wanted them to think about these things, but in a fun manner. And it's even, for example, on Friday, we were teaching project management, and we were splitting up into groups. The comment came up, I made a whole bunch of funny potential topics. And I'm like, I don't want to sit, I want you to create a project on, this funny thing. I don't want to sit and watch some boring project that you're creating, right? Let's have fun. And we did. We had a blast. And I think that those moments when you engage the creative part of your brain along with the other more analytical side, then the experience is more impactful and it lasts longer. And people feel more at home and comfortable.
And it also shows that you've been thoughtful, right? It's not just an assignment. You just said, hey, create a project plan, but you've taken the time to think through fun topics. And sometimes you make it very personal as well, right? Like
Yes.
you delivered poker chips to Kevin at one point,
Yep,
etc.
yep.
So all that shows that you've taken time to think about the person and make something that resonates with them. It goes a long way. Everything that you do has that thoughtfulness. Even your podcast studio, for example,
thank
is
you.
very thoughtful. You've talked about a lot of leadership philosophies that you share with people, right? And one of the things that I've seen you do very well is conflict resolution, right? You've been in conflicts. I've seen you been in conflicts. You and I have been in conflicts as well. But I've seen the approach you've taken towards conflict resolution. Can you share with your listeners and viewers what your approach is and how do you coach your clients through the AGN group? What is your philosophies on conflict resolution?
I love that you're asking this question because multiple episodes of the Badass Leaders podcast, we've talked about conflict. And when I was a guest on Vicky's podcast, she's like, so you talk a lot about conflict. Why do you like conflict? And I was like, I love this. Like, I love conflict. And so I'll put a link to a snippet that I talked about on that. But so my philosophy is it was very much shown. Initially, I learned so much from the book Radical Candor. Mm-hmm. And another similar methodology is Making of a Manager. It's a little gentler. Yeah. Radical Candor is a little more brash. Yeah. It's a little bit too much for some people. But I think that when I think about conflict is a couple of things. One, I think part of the reason I love conflict is that when coming from an abusive childhood, I was never allowed to disagree. So I was never allowed to resolve any issues. And so I would, over time, see the impact of people who were just quietly going along. And I saw that it was like stagnant and it was hurtful and people weren't happy and you weren't really thriving. And so the example when I talked to Vicky about conflict is I said, you know, the thing is that we are all better when we take all the pieces of ourselves and collaborate together to come to. Now, you're not always going to agree, which we both know, right? But if you keep all of those things in your head and they never come out, you have no idea the masterpiece you can create. And the example I used was of a puzzle. So imagine we're trying to do a puzzle together and you have a couple of key pieces that you've tucked away and I have a couple of key pieces. No matter how hard we work, like we might get a square rectangle thing we can frame, but it's not going to be a masterpiece. However, if we bring those pieces together and present them and then talk and collaborate over them and then integrate what makes sense to integrate, wow, it can be so beautiful. And so I think when I think of conflict, the first rule of conflict resolution is to remember that you should strive to get to understand the other person as a human being. So understanding humans as humans. The second thing is that whole adage, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason, is to really allow the other person to share what their thoughts are. And then the third, I would say, is very a Brene Brown technique. It's to then say back to them, okay, so what I heard you say was this. Is that right? And then allowing them to say, no, that's not what I meant. I meant this. And there is something that's powerful in the mind when someone allows you to restate something and really cares and wants you to clarify. Then suddenly, instead of, I really want the word conflict to not feel like a cuss word to people. I think a lot of people like cringe over it, right?
Cringe is the right word, yes.
Yes. And I really want it to be something like when the conflict happens, this is our opportunity to make something much more beautiful. So let's sit in the moment and do it. And respecting the other person by doing that, I tell you, a couple rounds of making sure, yes, okay, Gia, is this what you meant? And then you finally get to yes. And I say, okay, well, when this happened, the story in my head was this, that, or the other. Of course, typically the other person's like, that's not what I meant at all, right? Yeah. Exactly. And then you start to realize that oftentimes the stories we tell ourselves in our head aren't reality. And once again, while having healthy conflict allows us to work through that and really have, some of the best relationships I have are ones that we've had healthy conflict with. And I say healthy in that it's a two-way street. It's listening to understand on both ends. It's not raised voices or anger or things like that, but it's really striving towards a goal of wanting what's best.
Angela, you touched briefly upon your childhood. If you don't mind telling us your journey through childhood and how that shaped you to be who you are and how that's also helped you adapt this badass philosophy that's running your life today.
Yeah, so I was the third child of my parents. My parents got pregnant in high school. Their first child was born early, and I'm not sure if he was stillborn, but he was born with disabilities and either was stillborn or died very quickly. Interestingly enough, at 7 months, which was the same time that I lost my first child. And then my mom got pregnant very quickly and had a boy. She was really happy. Unfortunately, my mother, her whole life, had struggled with mental health issues. And so she had found her father had died by suicide, and she was the one that had found him. And it had other replicate, or what are the words that I'm looking? What is the words? Implications, repercussions. Yeah, yes, exactly. To her and her own life that caused abuse for her. And so she had developed this where she really didn't like herself. And so when she was pregnant with me, she told my aunt who'd been struggling to have kids, who was on fertility treatment, like she didn't want to have a girl. And my aunt had shared that, she did want to have a girl. And if so, she would name her Angela. And so then I was born and my mom named me Angela to spite her sister-in-law. Oh, and now the beauty of this is that my aunt and uncle ended up having 2 boys and they did not have a daughter. And I ended up being their daughter. Like they are literally parents to me now. And so that was a gift. But anyways, so when you have a child, though, that is raised up with a mother who can't stand herself and therefore can't stand this little girl, I was brutally abused very badly for the first, I guess maybe 4 years of my life. And they kept calling Child Protective Services to come in. And then, of course, they would come in. They were like, nothing's wrong. Until my mom broke my nose really badly. And then they couldn't hide it. And there are all these court hearings. When I was a teenager, I came across the tapes. This was back when we had tapes, right? I came across the tapes and I would listen. And it was really crazy as a teenager to hear your voice in a court recording from, that young. So anyway, but I really struggled growing up because then I had a whole bunch of abuse from my father and one of my brothers. And yet somehow I just knew that I was good. I knew that I was a good person. And despite all the negative things people were saying to me, I was just like, no, I know I can do this and I will. And I think that really just having that inner fire really kept me to that. And every time I had so many obstacles and so many pivots, but I just never gave up. Never, ever, ever gave up. And I think that has been kind of my calling card, is saying, I'm not going to give up. And then the biggest beauty was maybe my 30s when I suddenly realized I'm spending all this time trying to make my parents proud of me. Why am I doing that? Like, seriously? And then I just let go. And I was just like, I'm just going to be my best self. And to be my best self, I will say that growing up, I did a lot of service with the church and I loved serving. And I've been on many mission trips to different countries and I love helping communities and doing that. And so I think at the stage where I suddenly said, I don't need to make other people happy. I can be myself and I can keep looking forward. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm going to keep looking forward. And I can give love to other people and through that find much joy. That really, that's when we got to Be Brave, Be Badass. My whole point wasn't for me in the beginning. It was that I saw so many other people that were like, I could never do this. And I was like, yes, you can, And I really just wanted then to use my legacy to be helping other people be their best. Because when I do that, it just brings me so much joy.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. Also, even your story through your Georgia Tech years, when you went and got your degree with Rihanna, I want you to share that with your leaders because there's so much there, Angela. It's so inspiring. It gives everybody hope. It doesn't matter what circumstance you're in, you can rise above the situations. I'd love for you to talk through how you went through college with Rihanna as a single parent.
Yes. So I decided at 29 to go back to school to get my engineering degree with a special need. She was 2 years old and she had physical, speech, and occupational therapy 3 times a week. And I went to Georgia Tech to get my degree in biomedical engineering. And I had so many people tell me, including my ex-husband, her dad, that I would never graduate. I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't do it by myself and whatever, which once again, like, please tell me I can't do something and then I will show you how I can do it. Yeah. And so I had to live in graduate and family housing. The only amount of student loans I could get were the exact same amount that my baby brother, who was living in a dorm with 3 other guys, could get. And I had, daycare. I did get alimony for a couple years because I had helped put my ex-husband through school. But I couldn't work a job because I had my daughter and I didn't have any money for childcare, and it wouldn't make sense. I had to pay for childcare while I was in school. Fortunately, I got a job working in a research lab that I worked in almost the entire time that I was there, and that really helped me and gave me a little bit of income. But I think I just was so determined to provide a great life for my daughter and for myself that I worked really, really hard. I remember it'd be so funny because we would do team projects, and then typically, I mean, mostly boys, and they like, oh, I didn't have time to do my part of this project. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't even start doing any homework until 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
After taking care of my child and doing all of these other things. But I think that sometimes the things that are the hardest are the things we want the most and we work the hardest towards achieving. And so I wanted that degree. I wanted highest honors. And I think the other part that really made my time at Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech completely changed my life. Like, I'm so grateful. And I think it was also, I was coming through at a great time because the program was new and we didn't have the scholarships, the grants, the awards and stuff that the other engineering disciplines had. And it was really quite frustrating because we would go to the Women in Engineering banquet and all of these electrical engineering or chemical engineering, they would get all these scholarships and grants, and biomedical engineering would get nothing. And it was really because oftentimes those are sponsored by alumni with that, right? And the program was too new for that. But I was like, no, we can't do this. And so my happiest moment was starting these annual awards for Georgia Tech biomedical engineering students. And I just was showing Kajal them on Friday. Now it's a whole wall with plaques. And I was like, before me, like, these were not here. There was none of this. And it was just being able to, during that time, give back and also start creating a legacy of gratitude and appreciation and acknowledgement of hard work of other people. And by doing that, I was really lucky that I got the overall Best Student Award. It was the category that include research, leadership, community service, and academics. And so I received that award, which I was really shocked because I thought by being the person who was creating this whole program, no one would ever nominate and then vote for me. So then when my name was announced, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But I will say that I just kept doing the next best thing that I could and trying hard for the moment and then moving to the next thing and trying hard for the moment and then moving to the next thing. And that's really one of the reasons that I loved Ironman racing and long distance racing is this whole mindset of, okay, just keep going another mile and then another mile and then another mile. And plus I had this passion for engineering and healthcare. And so it was at the forefront of that. But I really thrived there and have so much gratitude for it.
You've gone on to give back a lot to Georgia Tech. Tell us a little bit about what you've done.
Yes. So I, at one point, was on the Biomedical Engineering External Advisor Board. I was then chair of the External Advisor Board, which was really great, too, because then I got to bring some amazing people onto the board to help grow the program. And then I am currently on the College of Engineering Board. And I also serve on the board to the president, which is the Georgia Tech Advisory Board. And I give 2 scholarships each year. That one is to a student that wants to go study abroad. I strongly believe, like, get out of your country and go experience the world. My whole world changed the first time I left the U.S. And then the other one is to fund students that want to work at a startup that can't afford to pay for an internship. And so it will give them a grant so then they can go. And why? Because I saw at Florence, like, when we had these interns, we gave them a real project. That was my rule, right?
Yep.
You have a real project. We're not micromanaging you. Yeah. You're going to have something to show at the end. And the value of that for anyone then adding that to their career is huge. And I wanted to be able, but also a lot of times students need to be able to make that money to pay for housing. Going back to my Georgia Tech days, I floated most of my education on credit cards because I could only, that was the comment about the financial aid. It's like, I can't get enough financial aid to survive. And they said, oh, if you have more, then you're still gonna have to pay it off later. And I remember exactly where I was sitting, and I looked at the lady and I said, you do realize I'm just floating this from credit card to credit card. I'm still going to have to pay it off later, So I graduated with $80,000 of credit card debt that I eventually paid off. But yeah, trying to navigate through all of that just continued to really give me appreciation for other people and made me stronger.
That's a lot. So in the 20 years since Georgia Tech, your life has taken quite a few turns, Angela.
Yes,
Today
yes.
you are the proud owner of AGN Groups.
Yeah.
You have gone on to empower so many leaders through the AGN Group as well. Tell us a little more about what kind of clients you work with, what kind of things do you do with them? I know you're also doing a lot of work through Chief.
Yes.
What kind of services can people avail from you?
Yes. So, one of my most fun things is to work with individuals on their own personal branding. And I kind of fell into my own brand. Like as I mentioned, Be Brave, Be Badass, I fell into that. And I actually didn't realize people were identifying it with me as my brand until every time I kept getting all these badass gifts. Like, I saw this and thought of you. And I was like, that is amazing, right? And so, but I love working with individuals that are trying to determine what their personal brand is, because there's so much power in that. After you've identified who you are as a human and what you want to accomplish, then it really helps you focus on the areas that are really going to make you happy and successful. So I love to do that. I also love to do team building exercises and to go into groups. So really help. I think that if you're running a company, you need to have someone come from outside the company to do some of these team building exercises so that they can then observe and give you feedback you're not going to see inside. So I really love to do that. And then personal coaching for individuals that are trying to navigate through their career, or they may want to start a podcast or a blog or something like that to help them understand how they can begin to give back in a way that's meaningful to them. And it's really important because what's meaningful to me is very different than what's meaningful. I'm working with my cousin right now on his brand. What's meaningful to him is very different than what it is for me. But really, I just want to be able to live this life in all these different areas, including Chief is lifting up other women leaders, is that I really just want to be able to say, I did my best to try and give the love, compassion, and support to other people that I didn't get when I was younger and really needed. And then when I got it later in life, I really was able to thrive. And I can see that difference in me. So the opportunity to give that to other people so that they can thrive is really amazing.
You've spoken a lot about your personal and professional life, but I want to explore the other dimension, which is you somehow make time for a million other hobbies. And I know it's a big part of your life because it adds more dimension and color to your life. So tell us a little bit more about how you got started in exploring hobbies. How can people make time for hobbies? Because most often when you hear people, at least in their midlife times, they say, I don't have time for hobbies. How do you make time for 10 hobbies?
Yes. Well, fortunately, I don't do them all at the same time, which is good. And I think that's part of it, right? Is that remembering that there's a season for things in your life. And you've heard me say this, but every time you say yes to something means you're saying no to something else. So choose your yeses wisely. I think that, I love blacksmithing. I love wood turning. I just started beekeeping, which I'm really excited about. And I think it ties to a couple things. One, being a lifelong learner. And I just get inspired by learning new things and crafting new things. The other is it's actually all of those are very stress reducing, stress relieving, and therapeutic. And so it is that outlet, and you could use that outlet. I see some people use it scrolling through Facebook and all of these other things. I don't do that. And so I think that it ties back to the time piece of it. We make time for things that are really important to us. And so I would encourage, it's really healthy to be a life, like research shows, if you continue to learn throughout your life, you'll live longer. It reduces a lot of mental challenges, and issues with dementia and stuff like that can be reduced by being a lifelong learner. So I would encourage you to pick something that you want to do. Blacksmithing was because I was going to John C. Campbell with Guy Griswold when we were dating, and he was taking wood turning, and I was looking through all the classes, and I was like, blacksmithing, I want to do that. I also love to make things to give as gifts. And I love to make gifts that people will keep forever. And so when I was pregnant with Rihanna, I learned to quilt. And so I did a lot of quilting back then. Because no one, like if you make a quilt for someone, they're not going to get rid of it. And so then with blacksmithing, I was just like, this sounds cool. And I also like to do things that are not typical girl things. Right? I like to push the boundary, right? Like those people are like, blacksmith, that is badass. And I'm like, yes, right on brand.
Yeah.
And so, but I was really scared. I registered for it. And then I was like, what if I hate it? Or what if I'm awful at it? And actually on day 2, I got horrible 3rd-degree burns on my fingers. I don't know that they were third, whatever. They were horrible, horrible burns. 10th-degree burns. I'm just going to make up a number. And I had already fallen so much in love with it that I was like, taping it up with duct tape and let's go. We're going to. And the instructor Pat, he was amazing. He still will message me. He was just like, I really thought you weren't coming back the next day after I saw those birds, right? I was like, nope, I'm in here. I'm going to do it. And so I think it's really empowering. And also you're banging on metal. So if you're mad at something, take a hammer and bang on some metal, right? So it's really pausing when you do those things. And your hobbies could be anything. It could be hiking in nature. Like I've hiked all over the world. There was a period of time where hiking was a big part. There was a period of time when Ironmans, I did 6 Ironmans. That was my hobby. So I think it's also when it's okay to say to yourself, what do I want to experience in my hobby at this stage in my life? And then digging in and doing it. And quite frankly, I believe if someone else can do it, I can do it as well. Now, I may not be able to do it as well as them. It may not be perfect, most likely will not, as going back to our earlier conversation. But you know what? At some point, everyone is a beginner at some point. And so you just have to decide, are you going to have your beginning day today, 20 years from now, or never? Because 20 years from now may never come.
Is it okay to give up on a hobby and go to the next one?
Absolutely. If it's not bringing you joy, and I think that's a big thing, right? If it's not bringing you joy, or maybe if it's too expensive, right? Or maybe you don't want, I took a long period away from blacksmithing because the shop I used, he had to move and I didn't have a place to do it. So I transitioned into wood turning instead. And so I think really it's absolutely, I think the reality is if you're going to turn away from a hobby, I would encourage you to pause and ponder and sit with why you're turning away. And if it's because you're just going through a lazy stage, think, am I going to regret this 20 years from now? Like I'm trying to relearn how to play saxophone. And I quit that when I was in 9th grade. And it's a big regret that I have. Like I really wish I kept playing saxophone now. So my saxophone is out in there for me to start playing saxophone again. And so I think that like anything in life, it's a stage and it's a time. And if you're going to transition off of it to something else, remember a couple things. One, everything you say yes to means you're saying no to something else. So choose that yes wisely. Don't feel like you have to do a hobby for the rest of your life. If you want to try something else and you only have so much time, jump in. And you can always come back, hopefully sometime in the future. But I think trying to not make, especially at our stage in life, to not make the hobby be the chore. So I think when the hobby starts to become a chore or you start to dread it or something like that, then you're getting burned out. So you need to evaluate why you're getting burned out and what you can change so you're not burned out and you're enjoying it. Because it should bring you peace, joy, fun, energy, not the other way around.
We're kind of almost at the near end of our episode here. I'll just ask one more question before we go to our final question.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about burnout. There was a stage when you felt burnt out or you were burnt
absolutely.
out. Tell us a little bit about how you recognized those signs and what did you do to get over that stage?
Yes. I had a stage in running Florence when 2/3 of the company was reporting to me. And I will say I love the COO role because I just am very organizationally minded and I loved the impact on the different departments that I could have. But at that stage, the challenge that I see as a COO role is that you are constantly context switching. A lot of other roles. So if you're like head of product, you're focused on product the whole time, or head of sales or head of marketing, or oftentimes a CEO will be very sales and marketing focused and they're focusing on that. But a COO is typically all over the place. And it just got to the point where all the context switching, all the challenges and all the different areas, and trying to be the connector, when you're the glue to a lot of other groups, then that is really exhausting. And you don't realize it, right? Because you're just coming in and you're trying to bring people together. But when you're that person trying to bring people together, it takes even more energy than if you're just participating. And so I suddenly realized, like, I was getting sick a lot. I was really ornery. I was kind of being bitchy at times, right? You remember, I would go into meetings and I'd be like, okay, we're going to solve this, do this, and let's move on. And I suddenly realized, like, I'm not being the human I really want to be, right? And this is not healthy for me at all. So I'm really grateful that, you know, I went to you and Ryan and to the board and was like, I need to take a sabbatical. I need time off. And so I did. I took 6 weeks off and I learned pottery, which I tried. One thing, I tried pottery, which I've done several times, but I'm like, pottery isn't really my thing. But I tried it because I was like, I want to do this. You know, I spent time yoga, meditation, got back into some of those healthy life practices that. And then when we came back, we were like, okay, she doesn't need to run 2/3 of the company anymore. Like, some other people should step up. And it was just a good reminder to myself, once again, of healthy boundaries and, you know, choosing what you're going to say yes to.
Thank you for sharing that, because many of us are maybe even struggling with not even realizing that we are on the brink of burnout as such. So thank you for sharing that. On to our last question for the day here, Angela. What is your favorite motivation?
I knew you would ask me that. And I was like, why do I not have it in here? So it is something like that. It is the quote that I wrote, is my life quote. And that's every time I can't remember exactly what it is. But it is that when you were born, you were given one opportunity to be yourself, to build a legacy, and to make a difference. Make it count.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. We've enjoyed this episode of Getting to Know Angela on the Be Brave, Be Badass podcast. Thank you, listeners, for allowing me to share the space with this wonderful human being.
Thank you. This was so much fun. I love it. Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Badass Leaders podcast. To hear more interviews with industry experts and learn how to grow your career and leadership potential, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. This podcast is a production of the AGN Group. To learn more about the AGN Group, visit our website at theagnGroup.com. There, you can discover more about our services, which include hosting workshops, management consulting, brand strategy, keynote speaking, and more. Follow us on all social media channels shown on the screen and displayed in the show notes. And until next week, be brave and be badass.